Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us to connect as a community today. My name is Robert Ford. I live here in beautiful Denver, Colorado, and I work with Heliospectra as a regional sales manager for the western region of US and Canada. I'm quite happy about this series of webinars we're hosting, where we can all get together online to share and learn. The challenges of COVID present a very real and a very real challenge, and I believe it's something that we can choose to actively adapt to. As our world becomes increasingly unpredictable, how do we build the capacities of our organizations and strategies to adapt to this? How do we respond to those changes? How do we build in capacity to be resilient? In other words, how are we leveraging this opportunity to learn and grow? One of the ways that we're all doing this is connecting more regularly in forums like this. So thank you for joining us today. I'm especially excited about today's event as we're speaking with some very inspiring leaders who have been able to rapidly respond to the COVID challenge while ensuring their staff, their researchers, their contractors are protected throughout this whole process and adapting to large and very complex facilities into a new way of operating. As we dive into it here, I trust you'll learn a lot from their perspectives. We made these webinars to connect our communities and foster a collective knowledge. So we'd really love for you to participate with us in the Q&A at the end. Please share your thoughts in what's called the questions panel on the right of your screen. We've got a team of people looking at those, collating them, and I'll be asking those out to the group at the end. So with that, I would love to introduce Av Singh. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, it's quite a privilege to host this panel. I have a couple of colleagues, Rhoda Maurer from Cornell University and Tammy Bremner from Colorado State. I work as a cannabis consultant. I've been a cannabis consultant just for a few years. I spent about 25 years doing organic agriculture here in Canada, and as adjunct faculty member on several universities across Canada and other countries as well. So I'm familiar with the academic space, and I think that's why I'm so excited about this conversation. I'm very happy to be part of the Heliospectra family and that they're hosting these webinars. So as I introduce our first speaker, I'll invite Rhoda to start sharing her screen. Rhoda Maurer is the Plant Growth Facilities Manager at Cornell Agricultural Experiment Station, which is dedicated to sustainable science and hosts more than 400 research, teaching, and outreach programs year-round. She's also served as the Director of the Horticulture the Cornell Botanic Garden. At that place, responsible for like 40,000 plants over 450 acres, creating programs with a vision dedicated to conservation and sustainability at Cornell and other arboretums, gardens and research stations in New York and Pennsylvania. So I invite Rhoda to share her presentation around COVID.
Thanks, Singh. Yeah, it's really nice to be here today and to just have the opportunity to share a little bit about what we have done in response to what's been happening to everybody, but also talk a little bit about who we are and some takeaways that we're thinking about as we move into the unknown of what might be next. So a little background, Cornell University is in Ithaca, New York. For those of you who are not familiar with Ithaca, it's about a 4-hour drive from New York City, and we have about 30,000 permanent residents. Tompkins County is the county we reside in, and it's mostly a rural and agricultural-based farmland around the central part of the Finger Lakes. The agricultural experiment station that I work for conducts research at more than 20 different field stations, research farms, and forests on campus in and around New York State. They're mainly field research activities and facilities for ongoing research, education, and outreach initiatives. And you can see on this image some of those locations. Myself, I manage 7 greenhouse facilities for the Cornell Agricultural Experiment Station. They total about 127,000 square feet and about 146 different compartments. And they're used mainly as teaching and research facilities that have about 200 to 300 different research projects at any given time. I'm also the manager for 125 plant growth chambers, which again are in several facilities located across campus. They range in size from anywhere from as small as 6 to as large as 108 square feet. And they offer, climate control, including heat, light, temperature, and in some cases humidity and carbon dioxide enrichment or depletion. We also have an arthropod quarantine facility where we have greenhouses, rearing rooms, incubators, and wet labs for that kind of work. And across horticulture and agriculture at the university, we serve plant breeding, entomology, plant pathology, soil and crop sciences, and controlled environment agriculture technology. And then we also have a teaching conservatory with tropical plant collection. So as you can imagine, we're a large university with a high focus on agriculture and horticulture for New York State. And this beautiful complexity is a wonderful thing in most cases, but as you can imagine, in a response to a pandemic, it's very complicated. So back in early February, Cornell University actually started having updates through the president's office about what was happening with coronavirus around the world and how it might impact what our operations as a university might look like. On the 27th of February, which was almost a month later, we had our first guidelines around travel restrictions and things like that. And on March 1st, we had our first confirmed case of COVID-19 in New York State. By the 5th of March, Cornell started a continuity contingency plan request for all operations. And on March 7th, 2 days later, our state governor announced a state of emergency for New York State. On the 10th of March, the Cornell president instructed that virtual instruction will probably most likely happen for the remainder of the semester, came out with some remote work guidelines, limited visitors to campus, and told students that they shouldn't be returning after spring break. But then 2 days later, our governor announced restrictions on mass gatherings. And then on the 13th of March, a day later, right after we had news about, there might be some remote work going on, there might be, virtual instruction happening. On the 13th of March, all of the classes were suspended at 5 o'clock the same day. All undergraduate students were instructed to make effort to get back to their permanent home residences no later than by the end of the month. On the 15th of March, we had research guidelines coming from the Vice Provost for research for reduction of laboratory research. And on the 17th, we had guidance about how to help decide that. We didn't actually start sending letters to our research users and farms until about the 18th of March. And on the 20th of March, we had our first confirmed case of COVID-19 on campus. Then a day later, the governor said 100% of non-essential work must, non-essential employees must work remotely. In other words, nobody else on campus, nobody else in the workplaces. And on the 22nd of March, we basically got a letter from the Vice Provost for Research and an interim Chief Research Compliance Officer on what essential on-campus activities qualified as research, or qualified as essential, I should say. And then we started, going through various other different kinds of responses, whether it be the president's outlining guiding principles, the president of the college outlining her guiding principles for COVID-19, or health and safety guidance coming from EH&S for essential lab work, you know, how to use discretionary funds, guidance on how to wear face mask coverings came out from our governor on the 15th of April. We actually started to review applications for seasonal field research on the 17th. And then right now, we're in the middle of reviewing a lot of those applications, and we should be probably final for that seasonal summer field research by the end of this week. So statewide today, we have 318,953 cases of coronavirus in New York. But thankfully, here in Tompkins County, we only have 133. Now remember, that's a population of around 30,000 here in Ithaca. So in other words, the response from the university came from a lot of different places and at a lot of different times and with a lot of different direction. And that complexity is a strength, but it also means that there's a lot of things that you're responding to very quickly over and over and over again. And so one of the things we decided we needed to do was really look at, well, how are we going to respond as an agricultural experiment station to what's going on and the information that we're gathering from all these different locations. We thought, well, first, all right, I've got to take care of the continuity of operations plans. Those things were basically, we had experience with a winter heat loss kind of planning scenario in 2012. We had the most severe drought in New York State in 2016 that allowed us to think about, you know, natural disaster type responses. But none of these really addressed a pandemic, as you can likely imagine, and more than short-term workforce reductions that might be at the root of, you know, a labor union strike or something like that across the university. But we did have things like existing standard operating procedures and best practice structures. We obviously have knowledge because of the kind of work that we do around PPE and from our pesticide application experience. We have knowledge about quarantines and BL2P facilities. So that was all helpful. And especially when you think about how coronavirus is transferred from, you know, shared surfaces, tobacco mosaic virus control and our strategies and best management practices around those kind of primed the conversation for other mechanically transmitted viruses, in this case, one that's contagious to people. But really, many of those SOPs, very few of them actually put people first. A few of them are around safety, but not to the degree that we're talking about that's needed for COVID-19. And none of our existing SOPs addressed a human contagion. So this was all new. And we had to start really thinking about, you know, who is it that we want to be during this time of a coronavirus? How do we want to respond? And I know that one thing I've been doing is, you know, trying to stay in the learning and growth zone and recognizing that that really is a choice with any challenge or any kind of heightened, you know, stress response or anything like that that people are experiencing. You really need to focus and stay in that zone as a choice of how you're going to respond to be most effective for people. Some of the things we really needed to do is take care of our team, right? We needed to think about taking actions that really safeguarded their health, but also we needed to communicate what we were doing upward and outward. We needed to formalize how we used existing communications. For instance, I have an email listserv of 360 faculty. I needed to formalize how we were going to use that. I needed to formalize how we were going to keep in communication with the various different facilities across the university, whether it be those service providers that help us with IT or those that help us with facilities repairs. We also had to update emergency binders for all of our supervisors, right? Having those was one of the first things we did so that we had copies at home and at work because we were doing remote work, but we were also doing on-site work for our supervisors and management. We pulled together excess PPE for donation. We reached out for support from, I mentioned EHS, Cal's facilities, and the people that we knew at the university who were on the incident management team or the president. And then we had to also reach out to researchers to learn what they were planning, what they were needing. There was just, listening, a lot of listening, and sharing everything that we basically learned with everyone, including our own staff. So one of the things I've quickly realized is that we needed some sort of standard operating procedure for COVID-19. And to do that, I went through a process of creating these guiding principles for the SOP. I needed to think about how to really increase some physical distancing as outlined by the recommendations of how to prevent COVID-19 from spreading. But I wanted to do that while also thinking about deepening our social connection and not using the coin social distancing in our work. So what did we do? We basically modified our team schedule so that of a team of 28 people, we have 14 growers, I think it is right now, that are on for a 7-day work week. And then we switched to another 7 people who are working that second week. And we're going every other week like that, so that we have a minimum of plant care staff on site that we need. And we, in that strategy, we're creating teams that are separated so they don't have contact with each other, and then micro teams within that are supporting each other as well, so that they don't actually come into physical contact with each other unless absolutely necessary. Our supervisors and our management team, myself, we have gone to some days on, some days off site. So we're doing both so that we can actually be there with our staff and supporting them on site as well. We created a calendar for shared spaces like head houses and workspaces that needed to be accessed by different groups. We have daily leadership check-ins with my team every day at 10 o'clock, which today we obviously missed that one, but that is a daily routine. We have regular check-ins with facilities, EHS, and university leadership. And we really try to focus on research support basics and really set realistic expectations, because even though we're working with less people there and things take twice as long, right, with some of these SOPs that we've put into place. So you need to really set those realistic expectations about what can be done and manage the workforce accordingly. Our staff created detailed SOPs for each greenhouse space, right? What they're going to water, fertilize, and the IPM plan for each of those spaces, because what if someone on our team becomes confirmed with exposure to either COVID-19 and needs to go into isolation, or they come down with the disease themselves. So we needed a backup plan so that communication was very transparent and very easily accessible for those kinds of emergencies. We've also required SOPs from each research group, so so that we can know exactly what they're working, what they're thinking about, and how that integrates with our own plans. Masks, I know that a lot of people may be wondering about masks because it's different from state to state, what the guidelines seem to have been at different times. But we made a decision that masks will be worn at all times in our greenhouses. And the reason we did that is because of the airflow and the increased velocity and potential distributions that droplets might have within the facilities. We've also gone above and beyond our own normal sanitation procedures in that we've asked our staff and researchers to sanitize surfaces that they're touching and using from the EPA list of effective disinfectants. We're also already trained backup staff, and we decided to use research teams as a last resort because, again, when this first came at us, we wanted to maximize that physical distancing between different people and safeguard then essentially our backup plans. We also had to review our facility emergency strategy and adjust that because the facilities team at Cornell essentially sent people home, and we only had 2 people on staff for the entire university to respond to emergencies, and then a second shift until 10 o'clock at night. And some of those people live 30 minutes away. So facility emergencies have been something I've continually worried about during this time. But most importantly, I really was focusing on taking care of people. So in our SOP, we went to the level of giving permission for wellness care for our staff while they're working and while they're working remotely. That's actually paid time. That's something completely new. We haven't done that, but it's essential at this time. So we implemented that. When I say we, I mean myself and our supervisors really have had to advocate for our teams up through the university to make sure that just the facility is getting cleaned. Bathrooms are getting cleaned, surfaces are getting cleaned, you know, things that are just seem very basic, but that advocacy and making people aware, think about those essential employees still on the ground, has been a process at the university. We keep asking for and sharing more information. We do regular on-site check-ins, and we don't just talk about work, right? We talk about what's going on in our lives, because all of that is so integrated right now. We try to pick up the phone more than usual too, you know, not just relying on email, but getting back to good old conversation, and that way you can check in with people's tones of voice and see how they're really doing. We're also sharing the load, right? To share, to source sanitizer, masks, things like that, and inventorying frequently because of this rotation that we've adjusted to, and just helping each other out to do that sort of thing, because we haven't always been able to source what we needed through the university sources. So thinking about some of the takeaways and what we're thinking about, because now we're starting to think about reopening and what that might look like, even though we have absolutely no timeline for that yet. Our expiration for the 100% non-essential employees actually expires the middle of this month, but we don't know if that's going to be renewed, extended, or what the university is thinking about for the fall semester yet. But here's some of those takeaways. Take care of the basics, make people feel safe, you know, check in regularly with all people on your staff, share information and communications even when they're difficult or not maybe the best news. Seek ideas from everyone and create platforms and spaces for engaging dialogue. You'll use tools that you already know as a leader to think outside your own box and help others too. Flatten communication hierarchy by creating multiple open communication channels, and don't forget to measure your effectiveness gaps with feedback and reflection. And some of the big ones for me is remember that calm has power over fear, and try to use fear to gather people rather than divide us, and maintain an outward mindset in support of the research teams and the units supporting us. So that's what I'll leave you with, and then I will just flash this up on the screen too as additional resources so that if you revisit the recording, you'll find those. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhoda. That's great. And it's great to note that Heliospectral will be sending out this link where you will get to see these PowerPoint presentations. So without further ado, because I really do respect, it's amazing some of the participants on this webinar. I want to give them as much time to ask questions. So please type in your questions and we'll try to get to them as soon as we finish our next presentation. And I see that our next presenter, Tammy Brenner, has already loaded up her screen. Tammy is the Plant Growth Facilities Manager, managing daily operations and administration for Colorado State University's research greenhouses, a biocontainment greenhouse, and a fleet of growth chambers. After spending more than a decade at USDA ARS and commercial wholesale greenhouses, Tammy now serves as a board member for the Association of Education and Research Greenhouse Curators and is a member of the Fantastic Four Research Safety Committee. That's pretty impressive. I'd like to know a little bit more what the Fantastic Four is. And is a federal select agent regulation certified. Without further ado, Tammy, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining in today's webinar. As Av mentioned, I'm Tammy Brenner. I've been managing the CSU Growth Chambers for about the last 4.5 years. So similar to Rhoda, I support research and teaching of about 45 PIs and 350 research associates and students. As my experience that kind of indicates that there's no way I could be doing this job without the experience I've had in the last 20 plus years. It really requires a lot of research in horticulture, customer service, and research, and there's no way I could be doing this job. So today I really wanted to share how CSU was doing their part in fighting this pandemic, what the pandemic process was looking like, and really how I was able to use my experience over the last several years to create this new normal. I'm guessing that you guys will all have similar stories that I do, and I'm really hoping that you guys can all relate, connect, and maybe walk away with some new ideas. Oh, oh boy, there we go, sorry. So first, a little bit about CSU. We are a land-grant institution similar to Cornell. We are located in northern Colorado, in Fort Collins, and within our backyard we have the USDA, the CDC, the EPA, and the Colorado Department of Health. So we have a lot of people that we collaborate with, and including the who are we? Oh yeah, the Infectious Disease Research Center. Currently, they are working on the finding a vaccine for COVID-19. It's kind of exciting to know that one of our departments in the university is working on fighting and saving the world. Saving the world. Anyway, as I said, we are a land-grant institution. We are similar to Cornell, except on the smaller side. We have about 60,000 square feet of greenhouse space, 25 growth chambers, laboratory space, conservatory, a teaching greenhouse. And since we have several research projects that involve plant diseases, pests, and other exotic organisms, we require specialized containment. So we have about 8,000 square feet of greenhouse space that's designated as biocontainment or biosafety. For example, one of the organisms that we work with is the rice bacteria blade, Xanthomonas oryzae. It's on a federal select agent list and requires SOPs and facility features to achieve the level of containment. And I'm not going to go into this a whole lot, but experiments may be assigned to certain biosafety levels, primarily looking at human all the way to plant levels. They go from the lowest risk and the lowest containment to the highest level of risk and the highest level of containment, whereas BSL-4. We operate off of a BSL-2, so this means that our greenhouses have a buffer area where there's no rice that's produced, locked greenhouses and growth chamber doors, key card access from the exterior, sterilization of all discarded plant material, sanitized pots, trays, and work surfaces. All irrigation flows into a holding tank where it's treated and then disposed of. Foot baths in all the greenhouses, and staff must dispose of gloves and hand washing before exiting the greenhouses. So what does this really have to do with anything? As you'll see as I move along, this really helped in the pandemic planning. It really was able to take what I do as a regular basis and just to apply it to everyday life. Not only did it help with the pandemic planning, but it also reduced a lot of stress. We'll discuss this a little bit more down the road. So our university had 3 levels of pandemic planning. And because we are located in the center of the country, we were able to watch the East and West Coast kind of happen. And we didn't get our first case of COVID until March 5th. So March 1st, somewhere around there, we started planning. We didn't move into our level 2 or level 1, which meant restricted gatherings, public buildings closed until March 9th. Level 2, we moved into March 17th, where classes were suspended, administrative and academic buildings closed, and we were to move all communications via email or phone call. Level 3 happened on March 23rd, meant critical research and services building. After that point, everybody was to be virtual except for critical repairs and essential personnel. So the first question was, what was critical research and operations? And this is kind of a little different than Cornell's. as I was listening to Rhoda's, it really meant if interrupted could result in endangerment to human or animal subjects or pose unreasonable risk to human animal subjects, loss of experiments and data that would be impossible to replicate, or loss of instrumentation infrastructure. But that meant plants were essential for us. The main objective of our critical research for our facility was to have as little people in the building as possible, but not lose years of data and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of research. So we originally were supposed to be going into business as usual. The university was really optimistic about, we would be business as usual, but virtual. But it was quickly obvious that we weren't going to be business as usual. We are making every attempt to flatten the curve. So there's online teaching, social distancing, telecommuting, DIY face mask, homeschooling, essential only. There's nothing normal about this. We really had to kind of get into this reality that this was not the new normal and that we had to adjust to that. But since I'm not one to stray away from a challenge, I really took this opportunity to redefine our priorities, including communication. How are we keeping our team connected? Critical operations, operational needs versus wants. And since I'm a project-based person, this is really a challenge for me to accept that we only could do the needs versus the wants. And how are we going to do the first two with safety in mind, moving forward with research and communication, but in a safe mechanism? So first, it was redefining our priorities. We had to, normally we would have a in-person daily chat of what's going on, research expectations, requests, facility issues, but now we couldn't. It either had to be email, phone call, or text. And not everyone is a big fan of text messaging. People don't operate versus on email that well. And you also, like Rhoda was saying, you really can't get a feel for how people are feeling. So I really had to adjust the communication style to fit everyone's needs. So now we email once or twice a week. I have a long conversation with my assistant manager via phone call, about once or twice a week again, and text messages. And since my staff and I have a pretty good sense of humor, we send out memes and emojis, episodes of the Bunny and Kitty show, another story. And we really also, really try to create that sense of humor and connection so that when we did return, everyone was feeling included. And we also had an idea what was going on. No one was lost in the system. We also receive weekly updates from our president. There's two of them. One is the reality of the situation of what things are happening, and the other one usually happens on a Friday, and it really helps. She really shares the silver lining of positive notes, and I really appreciate that. Kind of realizing that we are all in this together, but we're looking at it from different angles, and to show the positive side of things is really a nice thing. Again, moving on to our operations, facility monitoring, where our staff is not in the building as often as we are. The objective is to get into the building, check on the facility, and then get out. So our staff checks on the facility daily. They look at climate control, plant watering, making sure nothing wonky is going on. Our contractors are permitted to go into the building with safety precautions if there is a problem that is outside of our ability, mainly a growth chamber malfunction or a ridge vent that's broken, things like that. And we also recently installed a growth chamber monitoring system so that we can review our growth chambers remotely. So that does kind of help a little bit. As for plant care, generally it is the research lab's responsibility to take care of all plant care, maintenance, watering, etc. However, in order to reduce the amount of people in the building, we installed more irrigation systems before we left, and we also offered watering services to most researchers. Again, that's an area that I didn't want to go into too much, and most researchers really take pride over their material and they don't want us to water, but it's a service that we did offer. Obviously, security was an issue. We had to maintain our research, and we also had to make sure the building was safe and secure for the people that were there. The building was all locked down, and key card access was only available to get into the building. Our alarm system was checked before we left the facility, and we know that's functioning. And CSU facilities knows all of the essential personnel for each lab, and those people are all required to, I don't know if anyone does, but all required to use this certificate letter from the dean to get into the building. Obviously, sanitation was important. Restrooms, our custodial staff would come in 1 to 2 times a week to clean the restrooms and to take out trash, but they are not responsible for anything outside of the head house area. So we are responsible for door handles and greenhouses. So basically, we've taken our normal sanitation that we do for the greenhouses and upped it a level. We wipe down door handles, we clean our foot baths, we wipe down the bench tables with sanitation wipes. Little things like that makes a big difference. It's just taking those greenhouse cleanliness to a different level. As for pest management, like COVID-19, the less people, the less pests. We've had a substantial decrease in pests, which is really nice because no one's transferring them throughout the greenhouses. No one's moving plants. There's a lot less plant material in there. So my staff is really able to reduce the amount of pesticide treatment that we're using and really just do the mechanical pest control. Things that are not critical now are new projects, which is disappointing to me, and facility improvements. These things will all come back online at some point, but as of now, they're just really on the back burner. And given the fact that our budget will probably be reduced substantially, these projects and facility improvements will happen just a lot slower. Moving forward, originally I was talking about how we had to go into a new normal, and our SOPs really require revision to accommodate the new hazard, And the biosafety training that I've had, and Rhoda's probably, I'm assuming, has had it to a certain point also, has really come in handy. It's really given us a chance to reduce that stress. And if you look at the BSL2 SOPs, where there's buffering with rice, key card access from exterior only, sanitized pots, trays, and work surfaces, and hand washing, really work really well with the COVID-19 SOPs. You're quarantining, you're limiting large gatherings and social distancing, disinfecting doorknobs, washing hands. You just basically, from my perspective, you have to take a plant and pretend it's now a human or vice versa. So we also had to redefine our priorities again. We are buffering the virus with face masks in the greenhouses, labs, and other public areas. Like Rhoda, we are requiring everyone to wear face masks in the greenhouses. And anytime they come in contact, so we're having people just carry their face masks with them. Social distancing by spacing out our office area. I will be keeping my office door closed when I go back onto campus. One staff member will be using a vacant greenhouse or vacant classroom, sorry about that, to conduct all his office work, and all virtual meetings will still remain virtual, and we'll be doing day and evening shifts when possible for plant care, data collection, watering. Again, daily sanitation of hard surfaces, door handles, printers, control panels, etc. This is really important. It used to be a once a week, now it's going to be a daily. Disinfecting of pots, containers, bamboo stakes after each use, which wasn't necessarily the case before. Using our UV room, which is our main mechanism of sanitation. washing hands frequently and avoid touching face or mask. I know a lot of times that people, when you're working in the greenhouse, you can't wash your hands right away. So putting on gloves, we're fine with that. As long as you're not touching your face with the gloves on, and as long as you're using them and disposing them properly, removing the gloves properly is also another important thing. And, you know, 3 months ago, we were in the middle of, our college was in the middle of some major changes. We were in the middle of renovating our main building, creating a partnership with collaborating with a lot of external people. And PGF was in the middle of a large project moving forward. And right now, the brakes have been slammed on. The renovation's still continuing, but partnerships have been halted. Projects have been put on the back burner. But you know what? We're going to recover. This is not the first time that we've gone through a global pandemic, and it probably won't be the last. And you know, this little snip here from our college newspaper in 1918 just kind of reminds us. Actually, it was almost 100 years ago that this happened, and it's going to happen again. And you know, the point is to take what you already have. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but take what you already have in your facility and enhance it. Washing hands, social distancing, just pretend humans are now plants. From my perspective, that's how I was doing it, and it reduced stress. It really helped us realize what our priorities were and what's more important, of like keeping communication with people and making sure that there's that connection, and also just applying what we know. Kind of rambling on, but the point is, it's just really to is preparation. You know, we're going to do this. It's going to happen again, and just preparation is the key to success. With that, I do have a few references here, and I'll stop my rambling.
Thanks so much, Tammy. That was what I loved about both presentations is the emphasis around just human care and focusing on staff and really trying to use calmness and try to mitigate some of the fear around this and really kind of build a community around this. So I'm going to invite Rob to jump on soon to ask some of the questions that we've had. I did want a little bit of clarity around the difference between New York State and Colorado State. Hey, it's easy for me. Cannabis is essential. It's very good. I've been working nonstop throughout this pandemic. My understanding is that New York State saw agriculture as essential and not horticulture, and Colorado saw both as essential, or defined it that way. Is that true? Is that a fair statement?
Kind of.
So for me, yeah. Go ahead, Rhoda.
Yeah, I was just going to offer that what happened was two different things. So the research that we were doing and the plant care that we provide for in our greenhouses, we do agriculture and horticulture. However, the university just defined essential research as anything that would be germplasm loss, right? Or it would be, like Tammy mentioned, data loss for a long-term project. And they put the stop on new plantings with exceptions, where you had to put where you might be doing a you have to plant in order to preserve a germplasm line, right, or something like that. So the university had their own directives on what was critically essential, and they've expanded that as we've drawn on and the time has gotten longer, to include what for the summer field season what might be considered essential work. And so we're reviewing that right now, and pretty soon I anticipate that we might be starting that for fall preparations. New York State, on the other hand, has defined for the public sector that agriculture and horticulture is different. And so agriculture is considered essential and horticultural operations are not.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Great, I'll turn it over to Rob, and then
Great. Yeah, we've got some great questions from the community here. A little operational in nature. One of them is focused on the SOPs. So a couple questions here about how binders and physical interaction with SOPs feels a little dated and maybe even some kind of extra challenges you got to manage. What kind of software maybe do you use, or what kind of ways do you adapt to ensuring your SOPs are implemented across a distributed team?
I can take that if you want. So we use a greenhouse management system called Redbud. It formerly used to be Trellis. We've been beta testing it in the beginning, and now we are using it as a full-scale model. And that really helps us track reservations, billing, users, access, their SOPs, not their SOPs, but their WPS training dates when they're ready to expire. Pest management, so we're able to log our pest management and be able to see its tracking throughout the weeks. Preventative maintenance, when we've done it, when it's due, what materials were used. And so for us, the biggest mechanism that we use is our Redbud system.
Yeah, and I would say
Rhoda?
for us, we don't have that kind of a system. So that is why we went to paper, right? Why reinvent and try to implement something brand new during a crisis? As we've mentioned before, I think both our strategies were to lean on our strengths and lean on what we knew, and respond with those. So that's why ours wound up being paper. It did get distributed electronically. It's posted on our website. We do have a space reservation system that's an online system, but we don't have the same capacity that Tammy does right now for what she does.
Great. Yeah. Old-fashioned notepad, and you can't delete that, right?
No.
How many of these COVID measures do you expect to be like permanent moving forward?
All of them. A lot of this is standard SOPs that are happening, at least for us. Probably not the face masks. Hopefully that will be declined, because obviously greenhouses get hot in the summer and you don't be wanting to wear a face mask in the greenhouses all the time. But outside of face masks, I see all of those, for us, all of those being implemented permanently. Rhoda?
Yeah, and I would say that I'm not sure which ones, quite frankly, because I think, like Tammy's saying, I hope the face masks are not something that have to be permanent. But I do wonder about things like some of the split shifts that we've created,
Oh, yeah,
right?
that's a good one. Yeah.
Whether those would be a long-term benefit. I don't think so. The 7 days on and 7 days off, I know, is wearing on my own staff, and so I hope that doesn't go on forever. But I don't know when we can start thinking about a different strategy at this point. But the sanitation, I would echo Tammy that they're all just best practices.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of talk around automation, remote monitoring, using surveillance, any kind of new technology that you've implemented in your facilities around that to be able to see what's happening in a more remote sense.
I would say no for me. We have not installed any cameras or done anything like that, because there are some real restrictions around cameras and videotaping at the university. But I would also say that we already have, we use an Argus greenhouse control system. And so, we already have remote monitoring of the facility itself and what's going on in each of the rooms. So that's a big plus that already exists for us, not new.
For me, we don't have it, but it is something that has been on my to-do list for a while, and I think that security system or security cameras and additional remote monitoring is really essential, that I've been fighting for a while. And I think moving forward, I will continue to push for that, because like I said, it's again a best practice to be able to monitor that in the first place. So we don't currently have a whole lot of automation and technology to assist with monitoring, but I really hope to move that forward and get it to happen in the future.
I remember, your mention of being in the greenhouse environment with the droplets and minimizing staff in those spaces, because we've seen those kind of visual representations of people at the grocery store and someone sneezes and there's this cloud that goes everywhere. And you're in this greenhouse and it's times 1,000 in there. What are you doing to manage how staff interact in those spaces, coming in and out? Are you like limiting specific numbers to an amount of square footage or anything like that? Can you speak more to how your staff interacts in the space to minimize exposure?
I guess I can say that we've seen such a reduction in the number of people on campus that we really haven't had to think that proactively about it, and we're starting to think about it now. So some of those spaces might be more like head houses where we're doing, large planting opportunities and things like that. And many of the PIs are doing that themselves. They're spacing themselves out 10 feet apart from each other and, doing work. They're doing more than the 6 feet, which is nice to see.
I think from our angle, we will, I think we're going to, I don't think we will continue to offer those watering services. That way it, again, reduces the amount of people in the building. And if we already have a lot of people that come in during split shifts just because of their schedule or classes or work, whatnot. Right now, I would just encourage it to happen. If you can come in the afternoon and your other team member can come in the morning, that would be preferred, again, to space that out a little bit. Most of our greenhouses are large spaces, probably about 3,000 square feet. Greenhouses, so to space people out is pretty easily done. In the biocontainment greenhouses, it's not that easy because they're smaller in the first place. But again, I would encourage researchers to come in at different times throughout the day and really communicate with their team members when they're coming in so that they can reduce that, increase that social distancing even more.
Yeah, that's a lot of what happens for us too, Tammy, is that, we have made a request to researchers to try and work around our normal watering times, because we do provide watering as our normal business. Watering services, plant care services, all of those, pest management, fertigation, all those are included. So that's why we saw so few people on campus at the very beginning, because we were taking care of that basic essential care.
Maybe if I can interject and ask a question. Let's assume things go back to normal-ish come September, and research students are back, undergrad students are back, and classes are going normally. Perhaps there's a spike in November, and we go back to kind of our state that we are at now. Are there any measures that you feel like that we should have done differently, or that we should do differently the next time we go around this, or is it too premature to comment on that?
Well, I can say one thing for sure. I wish we had locked down our facilities earlier. Tammy was talking about access to the facilities and security a bit. We have building keys, but we have an old-fashioned building key system. And I would very much prefer to have a key access system that we could shut down immediately. Who has access, who doesn't, and implement that, because it's much more difficult dealing with an old-fashioned key system right now. So that's one improvement I would love to see happen in our future.
For me, it's really too early to tell. I would like it to have our research be able to not go to critical only. I would like to be able to continue some of, like all of the research, but right now it's really too early to tell.
Dovetailing into that, as as your facilities ramp up more and more, do you see any changes in how you're going to hire people or how you're going to bring people back into your expanded mode of operation?
Yeah, Rob, unfortunately, we're in a hiring freeze.
Yep.
So, you know, yeah, there's all that side of this too. So hiring freeze, you know, we are fully dependent right now upon our full-time staff that we have. Thankfully, we have retained three, I should say, temporary employees that the university laid off most temporary employees across the board. But we were able to retain them because they're critically needed for the support and care that we provide. So I don't know. I would love to have more backup people trained, but again, that's not sure we can do that right now, given the university. It's something we've got to negotiate.
You know, I'll kind of.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Tammy.
Oh, I'll just kind of reiterate, or bounce off of Rhoda a little bit, is that we are also going to be in a hiring freeze, and our budget's going to be, you know, cut between 1% and 20%. I don't think anyone knows yet. But right now, what part of what I'm doing is to utilize the resources that we have right now. And as of now, I manage one facility, but there's about 4 other facilities, greenhouse facilities on campus, that if we work together and collaborate and join forces and share resources, I think that'll help with, 1, our budget, and 2, our staff. So moving forward, this is part of my plan that we've been working on for the last couple of years, but moving forward, we're going to be looking at joining forces with all of our other greenhouses so that we can use what little resources we have together.
So I don't know, Rob, do you have any other questions that can be answered quickly, or?
Yeah, there's some talk about implementing access control to different greenhouses, who's doing what and where. Are you gonna follow any new health and safety, you know, how do you implement new health and safety regulations into applying how you're moving your people around within your facilities?
Trick
Yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that one either.
Yeah.
Yeah, think about.
maybe another one that might be more interesting, right quick. You know, talking about you know, how you're interacting with the plants. Is your plant engagement changed at all? You looking at like the ways that you're watering? You know, someone mentions the blue mat method, or even a really kind of wild question is, are you noticing any specific kinds of plants that might be, you know, a unique danger to COVID, or a carrier more than others? But more so about plant interactions.
We don't do a whole lot of plant care service on our end, so we will only be increasing that plant care a little bit. But as of my knowledge, there's no plant material in there that would have an adverse effect or prove worse on COVID. Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Well, I'm sure they're missing out on the extra CO2 that we provide when we're visiting them. So hopefully you can supplement that. I think we're going to wrap things up. I'm going to turn it back to Rob to conclude, but I just really wanted to thank both Tammy and Rhoda for their knowledge, the work that they do, and their passion around their staff. I think that's phenomenal. Their emails will be included in the link that we send out to all the participants. Thank you for joining. Rob, back to you.
Yes. Thank you so much. We're so grateful that you've been able to join us and share your perspectives around how you adapted your facilities to this. This webinar series, we've got a couple more lined up in the future, so please join us for those registrations. Again, Rhoda and Tammy's presentations are going to be shared Also, the questions that didn't get answered, we're going to reach out to you and respond on those. So you'll have our contact information. If there's anything we can do to help you out, please let us know. And thank you for being safe. Thank you for engaging with your communities and moving through this in a positive way. And look forward to seeing you all out there in the field and in the next webinars.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.